This is part two of the West Side hits. The controversy surrounding this particular hit was who the victim was close to. Let's get into it. Ralph Anthony Coppola, better known as Ralphie, grew up in both the Bronx and Yonkers, where he became childhood friends with Barney Belomo and would eventually follow Barney into the Genovese family, known as the West Side. Barney actually followed the footsteps of his father and was inducted in late 1977 at the age of 20 and placed in the infamous 116th Street Crew, which was the West Side's Harlem-based faction. In 1985, Coppola received a 2 to 6 year sentence for a 1983 arson that took place in Yonkers, and he was back on the street by 1987. At the time, the captain of the 116th Street Crew, Sammy Black Santora, had passed away, and following his death, Barney became the captain of that crew and would oversee the West Side's interest at the Jacobs Javits Center in Manhattan, where kickbacks were collected from companies who sponsored their exhibits at the center. So shortly after Coppola's release from prison, Barney placed him at the Javits Center as chief shop steward for the Carpenters Union. For the viewers who are unfamiliar, the Javits Center would host events such as the auto show, jewelry shows, food, beauty shows, etc. And the various unions would build out the booths or areas being used by these companies. So in the 1980s, a chief shop steward had the opportunity to make serious money. In addition to setting up his childhood friend with such a great position, in 1988, Barney had Coppola inducted into the family. So as far as Coppola was concerned, life was great. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. In 1991, the district council, who was investigating corruption within the Carpenters Union, removed Coppola from his position as chief steward based on his association to organized crime, and this took place sometime in 1992. By this time, the West Side's boss, Chin Gigante, had a mountain of legal trouble, starting with the 1990 indictment involving the Windows case, followed by a second indictment in 1993. Barney was someone who was being groomed for a boss position, and more importantly, someone that Chin viewed as his successor, which is why he was appointed to the position of street boss and handling the day-to-day operations in or about 1991 or early 92, which worked out good for Coppola as he became the acting captain of the 116th Street Crew, which was Barney's old crew. Nonetheless, Barney, like his predecessor, would have his fair share of legal woes as well. In June of 1996, he would be arrested and indicted on a racketeering case. With Barney no longer on the street, Coppola was left to fend for himself among the wolves. Prior to having his official title taken away from him at the Javits Center, he created an Eastchester consultant firm, one that he owned, and through a connection with the Men's Apparel Guild, a California-based company, he was involved in a scheme from 1990 to 1994, 3 years after being removed from his position at the Javits Center, that involved clothing expos, which were held at the center, which raked in over $1 million. His problems came about when he was indicted for fraud and money laundering in regard to the scheme. He would eventually plead guilty in exchange for a 24-month sentence. Nevertheless, the wolves started creating their own scenario, especially with the money laundering angle. Keep in mind, the scheme made the West Side over $1 million. However, Coppola was accused of skimming, and I've previously stated it's a serious accusation, which basically means a person's pocketing the money that's meant to be kicked up. During this time, Frank Farby Serpico had the acting boss position, and supposedly he either had or was trying to have Coppola shelved. Apart from the skimming accusation, the mob did its usual. People came out of the woodwork making further claims against Coppola, such as he let his position go to his head and was acting disrespectful towards people, which all really equates to one thing and one thing only: jealousy. As per his plea agreement, Coppola was scheduled to surrender in November of 1998 and begin serving his sentence. One of the reasons for that date was specifically because his wife was giving birth to their third child, and he wanted to be out for that. Here's what is known. On September 16, 1998, Ralphie Coppola was spotted on Stillwell Avenue in the Bronx. Apparently, he parked his car on Stillwell and Pelham Parkway. He was dressed in tan linen slacks with a cream-colored dress shirt worn under a cream and brown sweater vest and had black slip-on dress shoes. He also had a gold rosary around his neck. Sadly, at 38 years old, he was never seen alive again. The FBI and most people were baffled as to why the West Side didn't just dump his body in the street for everyone to see. But the West Side's message was not for everyone. It was an internal one. And they put the word out that he'd been skimming, among other things, and was decapitated. Maybe he was, and maybe he wasn't. But the message was loud and clear. Rob from us, and we'll cut your head off. Barney, along with 31 other people, were indicted for a number of crimes, which included Ralph Coppola's murder. The indictment states that while he was incarcerated in 1998, Bellomo authorized and sanctioned the murder of Ralph Coppola, a former Genovese soldier and acting capo who had been in Bellomo's crew.
This indictment is a litany of traditional organized crime activities. In this case, the acting boss of the Genovese crime family approved a murder while he was serving a sentence in federal prison.
The FBI experienced difficulty with conventional surveillance when it came to the West Side. For example, they once bugged a known hangout, a New Rochelle restaurant, Brunello Trattoria, only to have the bugs discovered. So they used what's called roving bugs, which basically turns your phone into a live microphone. And in July 2003, they activated roving bugs on 2 phones, one belonging to John Ardito, a West Side captain, and the other belonged to a lawyer by the name of Peter Peluso. Peluso was listed as a Genovese associate and first met Barney in 1974 when Barney faced a gun possession charge. Apparently, Barney was washing his car on East Gun Hill Road in the Bronx and had the gun along with policy slips in plain view. Peluso represented him and got him 3 months probation. Peluso began cooperating with the FBI and secretly pleaded guilty in July of 2005 to numerous crimes, including his participation in Coppola's murder. He admitted to being a messenger, specifically carrying messages to Barney in prison. According to Peluso, in September 1998, high-ranking members of the West Side approached him wanting to know when he was going to go visit Barney, and they told him that they were having trouble with Coppola. He claims he went up on a visit on September 14, 1998, and directed Barney towards the visiting room vending machines and relayed the message, to which Barney allegedly responded that basically his hands were tied and that they knew what was going on in the street and needed to do what they must, which, for all intents and purposes, sounds like Barney's giving his approval, but not so fast. During Peluso's initial meeting with the FBI, he told the agents that Barney had nothing to do with Coppola's murder. More crucially, there were no prison records of Peluso ever visiting Barney, and further, his description of the visiting room layout was totally inaccurate. Peluso was also caught on tape speaking to Ardito, stating that had Barney been out, he would have saved Ralphie. Barney has been known to save lives in the past, like when a West Side captain wanted to kill Carmine Polito, it was Barney who saved Polito. Personally, I don't believe Barney gave the nod to killing his childhood friend. I, more than anybody, know that in that life, these things take place all the time. Guys killing or setting their best friend up to be killed. But in this scenario, I don't believe that to be the case. Anyway, in May 2007, West Side member Pasquale De Luca pled guilty to conspiring to murder Ralph Coppola. He stated in his plea that in September of 1998, Fabi Serpico, who I mentioned was the acting boss, and who I believe pushed for Coppola to be killed, instructed him to meet with Coppola in the Bronx, most likely on Stillwell Avenue. They used the meeting as a ruse to lure Coppola. The meeting was believed to be held in a Bronx social club belonging to De Luca. According to De Luca, he was murdered by members and associates of the Genovese crime family. Surprisingly, De Luca also admitted to belonging to the Genovese crime family, as well as arranging the meeting where Coppola was killed. In exchange for his plea, De Luca only faced 5 years. Barney would plead guilty to charges, which included Coppola's murder, and I believe he only received an extra year running with a 10-year sentence he was already serving. Let me quickly mention the super thanks icon that I mentioned in lieu of Patreon, which can be found in the 3-dot dropdown underneath this video for anyone who'd like to show appreciation for videos like this. I'll end with the following. Ralphie Coppola's wife became a widow, left to raise 3 children on her own. Sadly, because he remains missing and never been declared dead, she's unable to collect his Social Security. Law enforcement initially listed him as a fugitive. During a Daily News interview, she made a powerfully sad statement, one that rings very true. So I hope that the younger guys who are listening Pay very close attention. It's been 5 years and no one has done anything. I get no help, not from the police, not from anyone. My husband's friends, they were always around. Since he's gone, nothing. Here's my message, and don't ever forget this. In that life, you have no true friends, only fair weather friends of convenience and opportunity.